Good evening and welcome to the JDRF 2023 TypeOneNation Summit. My name is Kristen Janke, AVP of Community Engagement and Strategic Alliances at JDRF. And on behalf of our organization, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this evening. Tonight kicks off the first session of our 4-part virtual series titled January Jumpstart, Real-World Tips for Exercise and Nutrition with T1D. And we're excited for you to hear from a group of dynamic individuals who will share their personal journeys with T1D and talk about how nutrition, exercise, and fitness can have a positive impact on your T1D management and mental wellness. The TypeOneNation Summit program offers education, connection, and inspiration on a variety of important topics to help you and your loved ones live well with T1D. Throughout the year, we'll offer virtual sessions like tonight, and many of our JDRF chapters across the country gather their local communities for in-person summit events. If you'd like to stay up to date on our virtual series, please register. We'll post a link in the chat. And you can also visit this same link to find an in-person TypeOneNation Summit event near you. Before we get started, I'd like to extend a special thank you to our national industry partners. Their support helps make the TypeOneNation Summit program possible. There are many options available to help you or your loved one manage and lessen the daily burden of T1D. At JDRF, we do not endorse any specific product or brand and would encourage you to visit our website to learn more about all the options available to you and your family. We also encourage you to speak with your healthcare provider to discuss the options and treatment plan that would work best for you or your loved one. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our host for the evening. A native of California, Jordan Liggins Robinson is a sports broadcast journalist. As a former student athlete, she covers women's basketball, pop culture, and their intersections, and has been published in GQ, Essence, Romper, and The Ringer, just to name a few. Diagnosed at 23, she aims to use her platform to spotlight how T1D can affect adults at any age and to bring awareness to the disease through the diverse experiences of people living with and impacted by T1D. Please join me in welcoming our host, Jordan Liggins Robinson.
Thanks, Kristen. Wow, that is a lot of jobs that I have to do. But thank you for listing all of that. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jordan. I'm going to be your host. It is awesome and a pleasure to be with you guys today. You are in for such a treat. You made the best decision to come hang out with us this evening. We have so much to get to. Make sure to tell your friends, your family, your exes, your friends, your best friends, your neighbors, everybody. Send them a link to make sure that they come and hang out with us. Also, feel free to comment, ask questions. We are here to chat. It is a community. We are so excited to be here with you. We have so much to cover. So I want to jump right in. Let's get right to it, to our very first guest, Dr. Catherine McManus. Catherine McManus is a licensed registered dietitian and assistant professor, vice chair for education for the Department of Nutrition at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. Catherine's expertise focuses on type 1 diabetes and culinary lifestyle medicine. She has completed advanced professional culinary training and has developed numerous culinary medicine research interventions, recently earning, I got to get ready for this award, Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics 2020 Innovative Culinary Effort Award. You know it's important when the name is that long. For her most recent interventions, Catherine previously worked as a nutritionist for Nestle USA and was an adjunct professor for the Art Institute of Pittsburgh's Culinary Arts program. Catherine currently serves as a vice chair of the Academy's Type 1 Diabetes Expert Panel and on the Clinical Advisory Committee for JDRF. Ladies and gentlemen, please show a warm welcome to Dr. Catherine McManus.
Thank you so much, Jordan, for that introduction. I really appreciate it. And I am absolutely honored to be here tonight to talk with all of you about the important role that food and nutrition plays in type 1 diabetes management during exercise. So when we're talking about exercise, good nutrition is really important to both fuel our bodies as well as to help manage our blood sugars before, during, and after exercise. But I'm sure as many of you have experienced, the immediate impact of exercise on blood sugars can be very, very tricky. because different types of exercise and durations have different effects on our blood sugars. So for example, aerobic exercise, which typically is done at a lower level of intensity for a longer duration. This typically tends to cause our blood sugars to drop gradually after participation in it. Whereas anaerobic exercise, that's usually done at a higher level of intensity for a shorter duration of time, tends to cause our blood sugars actually to rise and even spike during and after we participate in them. So it's really important to remember to be patient with yourself, because it often takes a lot of just trial and error to figure out how your body responds to different types and durations of exercise, and to figure out really what type of adjustments you need to make to your carb intake as well as to your insulin dosing to really help to manage and keep your blood sugars within that target range. And the best way to do this is to frequently check your blood sugars before, during, and after exercise. So when it comes to nutrition and exercise, two of the most common questions that I am asked are, number one, what should I eat before exercising? And number two, what should I eat after? So carbohydrates are really important for exercise because they are actually the body's primary and preferred source of energy. But for individuals like so many of us on the call tonight, really our carb intake before exercise is dependent on the amount, is dependent on our blood sugar levels before exercise, both the amount of carbs that we eat as well as the types of carbs. So if before exercise, our blood sugars are less than 100, it is recommended that we eat about 15 to 30 grams of fast-acting carbs about 15 minutes before we engage in exercise. And the reason for this is we want those carbs to start kicking in and raising our blood sugar, because we really want to be in the optimal range of having a blood glucose between 100 and 150 before we start exercising. So if you're lucky and you're actually in this optimal range of 100 and 150 before exercising, it really depends on the type of exercise that you're going to be doing to know how many grams of carbs you need, if any at all. So if you're going to be doing aerobic exercise, as we said, aerobic exercise tends to cause your blood sugar levels to drop. If you're going to be doing this aerobic exercise, you typically want to consume about 15 grams of carbs right before exercising to prevent your blood sugar from crashing while you're exercising. If, though, you're going to be doing anaerobic exercise, which we said tends to cause your blood sugars to rise and spike, usually you actually don't need any additional carbs before exercising. If your blood sugars before exercising are on the slightly higher side, so if you're in the 150 to 250 range, we usually don't recommend having any carbs before exercising. But if while exercising you drop to less than 150, at that time you'll want to consume about 15 grams of carbs to prevent yourself from having a hypoglycemic episode while you're exercising. And then lastly, if your blood sugars are above 250, really, really important to test for ketones. And if you have ketones in moderate or large quantities, it's really not good to exercise when those are present. So you want to wait until your blood sugar drops and those ketones have gone down. But if you don't have any ketones present, or they're present in just small quantities, it is still okay to exercise, but you're going to want to try to avoid eating carbs before exercising so it doesn't drive your blood sugars up even higher. And you're also going to want to avoid engaging in high intensity exercise, because as we said, that high intensity exercise really drives up your blood sugar. So in addition to carbs, protein is a really important nutrient during exercise. And the reason is that it really helps our bodies to build muscle. So before exercise, consuming a moderate intake of lean protein can really help you optimize all of the benefits that you can receive from being physically active. So here are some examples of healthy snacks that you can eat before exercise. All of these contain protein, and you can see that there are a variety of different carbohydrate contents in these different snacks, ranging from less than 5 grams of carbs all the way up to 30. So we talked about before exercise, what you should eat, but what about after? So the ideal kind of nutritional recommendations for after exercising is that you should really try to eat a meal or snack that contains both carbs as well as protein within 2 hours after exercising. And the reason for this is that carbs, and specifically whole grain or carbs that are rich in dietary fiber, can really help us manage and kind of stabilize our blood sugars after exercising. And in addition to that, they also help us to replenish stored glucose, which is known as glycogen, that we actually deplete or draw out of our muscles during exercise. So we want to replenish those stores that we have used and kind of burned off while being physically active. And then in addition to having carbs post-workout, also important is to have a source of protein. And the reason being, like we talked about earlier, is that protein has an essential role in helping with muscle growth as well as recovery. So including a source of lean protein can really help to benefit the outcomes of your workout. But when it comes to protein and working out, there's often a lot of confusion about how much we actually need to consume. So it's really important to pay attention to the total amount of carbohydrate that you're eating throughout the day, because the maximum amount of protein that the human body is actually able to use for muscle synthesis in a day is 4.4 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And actually, any protein that we're eating in excess of that quantity is for the most part, is just going to be stored as fat in your body. So really making sure that you're not eating excessive quantities with hopes of gaining muscle, because we really cap out at this 4.4 grams of protein per pound of body weight. In addition to paying attention to the quantity of protein we eat, we also want to really pay attention to the types of foods that we're eating as well that contain protein. So aiming to choose and select lean sources of protein from a variety of foods such as nuts, legumes, and seafood, and really spreading out our intake of protein throughout the day, because this again can really help to optimize muscle synthesis. And then the last point I want to make is about hydration. And the reason that I really want to emphasize hydration is that individuals with type 1 diabetes are actually at an increased risk for dehydration. The reason being that we are regularly just having a higher blood sugar than individuals who do not have diabetes. And especially this occurs when we experience a hyperglycemic episode. And during these times, we see that we actually have decreased hydration in the human body. So we want to be sure to drink plenty of water before, during, and after exercise to prevent becoming dehydrated. So I've just shared a lot of nutrition advice and nutrition recommendations. So let's actually put some of these into action by preparing and planning a healthy post-workout snack that you can eat. And we'll be doing this by doing a cooking demonstration of a recipe for veggie egg muffins. So veggie egg muffins are an excellent post-workout snack. And the reason being is that they contain eggs, which are an excellent source of lean protein, which we said is great for muscle repair and recovery. And they also contain a variety of different veggies. And one veggie that they contain that I really want to highlight are sweet potatoes. And sweet potatoes are really important to this recipe because they are such an abundant source of dietary fiber. And this dietary fiber, as we said earlier, really can help with our blood glucose management. So let's roll into our cooking demonstration. So I actually don't think that's the beginning. Can we roll that back a little bit, please? There we go. All right. So to make our veggie egg muffins, you need to first preheat your oven to 375 degrees, and then wash and peel one medium sweet potato. You then will shred that sweet potato. And as you can see, I just used a traditional grater to do this. So you don't need any fancy or special equipment to make this recipe, which makes it really, really nice. The sweet potato, as I mentioned earlier, is a really important part of this recipe because sweet potatoes are rich in nutrients, including vitamin A, vitamin C, and dietary fiber. And that dietary fiber, as we said, plays such an important role in helping us manage our blood sugars after exercise. So after we finish grating that sweet potato, you will then take a muffin tin and spray it with nonstick cooking spray. And you can see here that I used an olive oil cooking spray for this recipe. You will then evenly distribute the grated sweet potato among the muffin cups and press and pat them into the bottom of each cup, either using the back of your hand or you can use a spoon, as these sweet potatoes will form the crust for your egg muffins. You will then put the muffin tins into the oven and bake them at 375 for 10 minutes. While the sweet potato crust is baking, you can then prepare your other veggies. So I chose to use a red bell pepper and spinach, but you can feel free to use other veggies such as mushrooms or kale. So for the red bell pepper, you can see here that I cored and removed the seeds from that bell pepper and then chopped it into bite-sized pieces. Red bell peppers are one of the richest sources of vitamin C, which can help with immune function and tissue growth and repair. So a great choice for this recipe. So after chopping the red bell pepper, you can just set it aside in a bowl and prepare your second veggie, which, as I said, I chose to use spinach for this version of these muffins. So here you can see that just like the red bell pepper, I chopped the spinach and then combined it into that same bowl that I placed the chopped red bell pepper. So one of the reasons that I did choose spinach is, number one, it's very colorful, so it really makes for a nice aesthetic appeal to this recipe. And the second reason is that spinach is very nutrient dense, meaning that is abundant in many nutrients, including vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin K, along with iron, folate, and potassium. So after chopping all the spinach and all your veggies are combined, you then mix the red bell pepper and the spinach to combine these two veggies together. The next step for this recipe is that we will prepare the egg mixture. And we'll do this by cracking 10 eggs into a mixing bowl, and then we'll be whisking them together. Once you have the eggs very well whisked, you will then add in half a cup of either skim or low-fat milk to those whisked eggs. And then the next item that we'll add in are your spices. So for these eggs, I used half a teaspoon each of garlic powder, minced onion. I used salt, ground black pepper, and crushed red pepper flakes because my family likes a little heat in our food. But just like the veggies, feel free to swap out any of these spices for some of your and your family's favorites. So then once you add those spices, you'll whisk the egg mixture again before adding in 3/4 of a cup of shredded Colby or cheddar cheese and mixing one last final time. The next step is, once that is all mixed and combined in that egg mixture, you will evenly distribute the egg mixture among your muffin cups, which, as you remember, were baked in the oven at 375 for 10 minutes to form that nice crust on the bottom of your egg muffins. And to make it easier to evenly distribute the egg mixture into the cups, I first pour the egg mixture into a liquid measuring cup. So once those cups are filled with the egg mixture, you'll then evenly distribute your chopped veggies into your muffin cups. And then you can use your spoon to actually kind of immerse those veggies into the egg mixture so they really bake well when they're in the oven. You are now ready to pop that muffin tin with your veggie egg mixture into the oven, which is still at 375 degrees. And you'll bake these for about 20 to 25 minutes or until the eggs are set. So you can enjoy these delicious egg muffins hot right out of the oven. And then you can cool the remainder. And the great thing about these is that you can pop them in the freezer and they make for an easy grab and go snack after exercising. The recipe for these egg muffins will be shared in the chat so you can make and enjoy these at home. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have at this time.
Yes, we have some questions, but I think my number one question is, why isn't there a cooking show led by you just for type 1 diabetics? I would totally subscribe to that because I cannot cook for anyone.
Jordan, we should get this going.
We should get it going. I could just
Love
host
cooking.
and I could be your hype woman, but that's all I can do. I can't cook. One question that we did have from the audience: what what if you're riding 105 miles in one day on a bike? How many carbs is that? How do you count that?
Yeah, so that is a great question. It's very personalized and individualized. So it's hard for me to just give you a set number of grams that you would need. Since this type of exercise would be considered aerobic, and we said aerobic tends to have your blood sugar crash quite steadily, and you're clearly exercising for a very extended duration of time. This would be similar to someone who is running a marathon. You would really need to have a consistent intake of fast-acting carbs to be able to maintain your blood glucose level at a steady rate. You will see that typically in the beginning of your exercise duration, when you're riding these 105 miles, you will see a gradual slow drop in your blood glucose levels. But then as you start going for an extended duration and get more and more miles behind you, you will start to drop much more rapidly. So being sure to have an abundant supply of fast acting carbs readily available. And again, you really want them to be fast acting because you're going to be biking for such a long period of time. And again, I apologize. I wish I could give you an exact number, but I would need to know your weight and so many other details about you to be able to provide that.
That 105 is so specific. Good.
Kudos to
Shout
you
out to you, Melissa.
Yes.
You can do that.
Do that.
I could not. I can barely ride the stationary bike. Let's see if we have another one. One I do have in our chat. What are some good options for someone who doesn't eat meat? They don't eat a lot of meat. How can they make sure to get enough protein to help build muscle?
That is an excellent question. So this is where I would say really, really turn to those nuts, legumes, and seeds. These are excellent sources of proteins. You can also add soy into that combo because these are really nutrient dense. And what I mean by that is when you're eating those, not only are you getting protein, but you are getting so many other really important nutrients. You're going to get many, many vitamins. You're getting many minerals. And so many of them also have our healthy fats, so like our omega-3 fatty acids, which are even more beneficial during exercise because they help decrease inflammation. So really taking a good look at kind of the legumes, the nuts, the seeds, and you can get really creative with those, with roasting and with sauteing, combining a bunch of different spices. It's a great way to make them very, very flavorful.
I love it. That's a whole segment of our cooking show. I'm manifesting it. I know that it's going to be good. Thank you so much, Catherine. I want to make sure I was taking notes. I want to make sure we go over some of these highlighted tips and make sure everybody really understands what we just learned. I learned so much. One thing was before exercising, consume a moderate intake of lean protein, just like you talked about, and adjust carbohydrate intake based on blood sugar levels before exercising. You really talked about that range of if you're less than 100, making sure that you know what you got to do to make sure you don't drop any lower. We all know that game. And then after exercising, consume a meal or snack like your wonderful recipe you showed, with lean protein and dietary fiber-rich carbohydrates within 2 hours of exercising. I did not know that. I feel like that time is really important after you exercise. Next one, protein. Choose a lean source of protein from a variety of foods and spread intake throughout the day. Why is throughout the day so important?
It's a great question. So the human body can actually only synthesize and build so much protein within one mealtime setting. It's really capped at like 20 to 30 grams within a single meal setting. So a lot of times if you see people consuming these huge amounts of protein at one time, which honestly is often shown in the media with athletes, we're only actually using 20 to 30 of those grams at that single time point, and the rest of that protein is just being stored as fat. So we want to be sure, especially for these athletes that are riding 105 miles on their bike in a single day, you have high protein needs. So you need to be sure to spread it out throughout the day so you're getting enough to really optimize your muscle health.
Yes. And the last one is hydration. I got my water here. I need to drink way more water. I know we all do. Individuals with T1D are at increased risk for dehydration, so drink plenty of water before, during, and after, literally all day. We just need to drink more water. Well, I think those were all the tips. I learned so much. Thank you so much, Catherine. We really appreciate
you, Jordan.
you.
And I want to try those veggie egg muffins when you make them.
Yes, let me do a test run first, and then I'll share
We'll do
them.
that. We'll give you a trial run.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Let's get into our next guest. We're just getting started here. We have so much to get to. Our second guest, she's a television and film actress, singer, and songwriter who discovered her passion at a young age. At 11 years old, she did her first commercial, and since then, she starred in several roles, including CBS's Criminal Minds and SEAL Team. More recently, I'm sure you have seen her as Riley in the Netflix hit film Purple Hearts. Please join me in welcoming actress and artist Brianna Raquel. Hey!
Hi. Thank you so much for that introduction. Wow, like made me sound really cool.
You are cool. We are just in the presence of your coolness. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy holiday schedule and hanging out with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
We're so excited to have you. So we're going to do a little Q&A. I have a couple questions for you. They're all about you, so they should be really easy. You got the answers already.
Okay.
Perfect. So the first one, we talked about how, you had your first commercial at 11, but when did you know for sure that you wanted to pursue acting and music?
Oh man. I started voice lessons at 5. And you don't really know anything at that age, but I just knew that I loved it, and I've loved music and singing and songwriting, I guess since then, so it was, like, meant to be, like, I popped out loving music. Um, I started doing acting at, like, 8, I took a little break, got back into it at 11, but I wasn't really, like, sure I wanted to pursue it as a career until I was about, I don't know, maybe, like, 12, 13 to maybe like the tween years.
Yeah. That's a great age. That's also when I was convinced that I was going to be on Disney Channel because Raven's show had just ended. I was like,
Yeah.
they need one more. I was ready.
Yes, and you see that they came back with one, so you totally could've.
I totally could have. I missed my window, but it's okay. This is not about me. This is
I'm
about
sure there'll be
you.
another.
What you are a type 1 diabetic. You were diagnosed at 18 years old. What did you know about T1D and how did it initially impact that pursuit of acting and music?
I literally knew nothing. I knew of only type 2 and, like, what I've seen, I don't know, through public school health class and, like, TV shows. Like, I wasn't even sure what diabetes was, especially not type 1. So, I was, like, completely blindsided with that. And I think when I first was diagnosed and I thought about what that meant for my career, it was really scary because I was like, "I don't even wanna go to an audition." And so this was when auditions were still in person. This was before COVID, for all that craziness. I was scared to go because I was like, what if my Dexcom goes off in the audition room? And I had these, I don't know, like intrusive thoughts of like, they're not going to cast you. Like, you're going to be a hassle on set. It was like all these negative things that came with that, that I was like, wow, like this is something I actually have to manage on top of everything else in my life. So it was pretty difficult, but really opened up my eyes to what I am capable of doing on top of everything. So that's enough, I guess.
That's amazing. Yeah, who has not had their Dexcom go off in a
Listen.
meeting in the worst time possible?
Yeah. No, it has definitely happened, and I think I needed to just get past that first, like, Dexcom blaring through a take for me to be like, "Okay, all right, I made it through that hoop."
You made it through, and I love that your recent film, Purple Hearts, for those who don't know, the lead character has type 1 diabetes, but
Mhm.
you were able to star in the film. How was that to work with someone who's acting like they have type 1 diabetes and you actually have type 1 diabetes?
That's actually crazy because when I first auditioned for the film, I didn't read the whole script. It wasn't available when you audition for it. It wasn't until I got the part that I was reading the script and I was like, "Wait, she's checking her sugar. Wait, what?" And I had no idea, and they had no idea at all. Like, director, Sophia, the casting department, none of us had an idea that I was actually diabetic, and the story was about her overcoming, like, all of these hardships with type 1 diabetes and stuff. So it was a very surreal moment on set because I was like, I don't know if you know, but I didn't know. So I'm actually type 1 diabetic, and it blossomed into like me being this real life source for Sophia to tap into, in the way that she just welcomed in the advice and the comments or whatever else. Like, she had questions, she was very respectful, listened a lot to what I had to say and my opinion on things. It was great, honestly, and I felt very seen on set and watching the movie.
Yes, we love when a type 1 diabetic is on the big screen. Like, that was so cool for all of us to feel seen, and I bet it was amazing to be a part of that set. That is an incredible story.
It really was, and it's one of those meant to be type of things, because like, make
What are
it,
the odds?
you can't
Yeah.
make it up. Like, make it make sense. You can't. That's just a meant to be moment.
I love that. I love that for you. I'm sure that will always be a role that you remember in a film. Also, go watch Purple Hearts if you guys have not.
Thank
We're going to switch gears. We're going to play a fun game. Are you ready?
Yes.
We're going to play What's in Your Bag, and me and Brianna are going to take turns picking things out of our bag. First of all, I'm not a purse person, so I'm a fanny pack person. So
Really?
whatever can fit in here.
Yeah.
We're gonna see. These are things that we cannot leave home without. I'm gonna go first. Mine is pretty simple. I have to have my phone because of my CGM. Like, I wish I could just unplug and not, it's besides my addiction to TikTok and how much I love social media. Besides that, I can't leave my phone at home, but also because of my CGM. So I think my number one thing is my phone. What about you? What's your number one thing?
Okay, I'll choose a different number one thing. I feel like this is going to say a lot about me, but I can't go anywhere without lip gloss.
I love it. That was one of mine too.
Essential to life. So lip gloss for me.
That's a great one. Great one. So my second one, this is a safe place. I feel like you guys are my people and you're not going to judge me. But with that said, I have my needles in a Ziploc bag that I keep. I'm going to get a cuter bag. I promise. But for right now, I got my insulin in here. I got it's green with the green. I tried to coordinate. So I can't go anywhere with my insulin.
I'll give you that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's actually better than me, because mine, I think I just have like needles floating around in my purse. So like, I am a purse person. So it's just a dig around to get the needles out. But I also have my backup pen, but this kind of goes with my Omnipod PDM. So those kind of go hand in hand. That's like my backup, and that's like my lifesaver. So
we kind of need it. It's kind of essential. Speaking of, my third one, I got to have a low snack. I got some fruit snacks in my bag always. They're kind of just sprinkled out throughout all of my bags and in my car. We just got to stay ready. And I got some fruit snacks. So that's my number 3.
Okay. I will do something different. I, of course, I'm going to go simple. Wallet. I have my wallet.
You need it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. I know mine is really taken up a lot of space. I like the yellow though, but I'm going to go hand sani. We need it. We have to have it. I love this one. This one's like a naturals. It doesn't smell as bad, but you got to have this on deck. Ever since 2020, we have these in our bags.
You know what? You're better than me. I have one in a cute little case, and then sometimes the lip gloss takes over. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, it was your number 1, so we understand. We get it.
Bad. It's bad. Like, I should really switch that out for hand sanitizer. Okay, my next one. I use this little glucose gel.
Ooh.
It's orange flavored. It's skinny, so I can take up more room for my lip gloss, obviously. But it's great. It's fast acting, so love it.
Nice. Oh, that is definitely good on the space saving. This one is really embarrassing, but I have motion sickness wristbands because I get really bad motion sickness. So anytime I'm in an Uber, on a plane, I got these wristbands going. They're not to go like this, but just to help my motion sickness.
Well,
So
then, hey, that's an essential.
it's
That
an essential.
definitely.
I would need them more stylish, but besides that.
I'm trying to think about what else. I've got a pen
Hey,
for whatever I'll need. A
for
pen
signing autographs, that's such
Oh
a
yeah, let me just pull out my pen. No, maybe it's like writing a note if I accidentally like hit someone's car, like something else. Like I don't know. Not
You're
that.
ready. You're ready though. I love it. That was so fun. I feel like we
know.
got a little glimpse into more of who you
We were
are.
kind
I
of
love
on the
that.
same page. I like that.
Love that. You got to have some insulin, you got to have some low snacks and some lip gloss. I do have my lip gloss in here. I'm not going to leave you hanging.
There you go.
I had it. I
It's
had it ready for you.
essential. It's essential. I'm not even gonna hide it.
Well, before I let you go, this was so fun. Last question. What's the silver lining of being a T1D? What's an inspirational message that maybe you want to pass on to someone watching who maybe just got diagnosed?
Ooh, that is a really good one. I think there's so many negative things that can come with type 1. The one positive thing that I am actually grateful for is that I learned to listen to my body so much. Like beforehand, I was like, oh, I feel kind of weird. Okay. And now I feel like I can listen to my body and be like, I know I'm going down, or I know I feel a little bit higher than I normally do. And so I feel like tapping in to that has made me save myself like so many times. Like I'll catch it before my Dexcom sometimes. And I'll be like, I know I'm going low, so I should treat or correct or plan to accordingly. And I feel like that's a skill I never had before I was diagnosed or before I was forced to listen to myself. So I think that's important. And I think it's important to preach about it, especially when you're telling symptoms online or if you're talking to someone who's recently diagnosed, of like, you can listen to your body and you don't have to rely on all of your devices. Like you can listen to yourself. And even if you're saying like, oh, I'm only at 70, but I kind of feel a little bit lower, like that's okay too. I've learned to be patient with my body and listen to it. And I think those are two really great things out of it. So
and as you're listening to your body, you are traveling, you have to be fit for all of your roles, performing, all of these things. What exercises or things that you do to listen to your body to make sure that you are trying to stay stress-free as much as possible?
Stress is such a hard one, like such a hard one. But I will say I honestly force myself to watch my feel-good movies and do a face mask. And all my feel-good movies are just chick flicks, like The Wedding Planner, 10 Things I Hate About You, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, like all of those, like, okay, cheesy ones that are just so good. But that and like a face mask from Lush or something is just, that's a stress-free moment right there. And I cannot give that up.
I love it. We're going to talk about some physical exercises you could do later on today, but a face mask and that's self-care. And the wedding planner and J-Lo, that is self-care. Yes. I love that.
Exercise, I will say I like to do like Pilates. But like the small studios, you can really work with them. And it's like on the reformer bench and stuff like that, I feel like the tension versus like super cardio and stuff like that. Because I learned a lot from, I think, Catherine. She was just on. I learned a lot from her. I was taking notes on that. Because I tend to go for like the Pilates, like slow tension type of thing, because I'm scared to go low and be like, oh my God, I don't have enough sugar. So yeah, exercise wise, I guess I'll tend to go for like a small Pilates class.
Nice. Okay, what's next for you? Any projects that you can spill about? Any secrets that you can spill?
Right now, I am working on some music. So back in the studio, I'm doing a lot on social media as well. So that will be great. And that's also where you can find me on Instagram, TikTok as well. All of my usernames are at Brianna Raquel. I have a puppy, sorry. But yeah, you can find me and connect with me on there. I post a lot about my journey or what I'm doing or just random updates, what I'm eating, whatever.
Amazing. Well, I will be following. I already followed you, but I'll be following.
Oh my gosh, really? I'll get you back. That's
Thank
awesome.
you so much. This was so fun.
I know. I love that.
appreciate
What's my
it.
bad game? Thank you so much.
Well, we will talk to you later. Thanks for hanging out with us. Oh my gosh, we have so much more to get to. That was so much fun. My bag is all over the table right now, but we'll put that together later. Let's go on to our next guest. Mike Riddell, PhD professor, York University in Canada. Michael is a professor in the School of Kinesiology and Health Science and Muscle Health Research Center at York University in Canada. He is also a senior scientist at LMC Diabetes and MANA Research in his hometown of Toronto. His research interest centers on the effects of exercise and stress on diabetes and metabolism. Dr. Riddell has a PhD in psychology, pharmacology from McMaster University, where he conducted studies on hypoglycemia prevention during exercise in children and adults living with type 1 diabetes. He did his postdoctoral studies at the University of Toronto under the supervision of Dr. Brianna, where he conducted studies on the impact of stress hormones on diabetes-related hyper and hypoglycemia. A recipient of the Faculty of Health Dean's Established Career Research Award, Riddell currently holds a research grant spanning from preclinical studies of hypoglycemia prevention to clinical trials to exercise management. His research team uses a broad selection of innovative models and techniques to discover how regular exercise, stress, and diabetes influence metabolism and health. We were just talking about that. Michael has been living with type 1 diabetes since the age of 15. Please welcome Dr. Michael Riddell.
Thanks, Jordan, for the introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here to discuss some of our recent research trends in the area of exercise and type 1 diabetes. Now, we know all of us living with type 1 diabetes have been told that exercise is good for us. We can see evidence in the literature that exercise improves our own unique fitness, helps our aerobic capacity, it increases our skeletal muscle health and our bone health. We know that if we're exercising regularly, our bodies are more sensitive to the insulin that we take every day. It also gives us a sense of well-being. It lowers our risk for cardiovascular disease and even microvascular diseases associated with diabetes that could be affecting our kidneys and our eyes. There is emerging evidence, which I'll share with you today, that regular exercise might help us achieve our glycemic targets, more specifically our time and range if we use CGM. The current recommendation is that we do about 150 minutes of cumulative exercise per week. Some of us try to do more, like Jordan and I do, and some of us need to do more, I think, to improve our overall well-being while living with type 1. Now, blood sugar management during exercise can be a real challenge for all of us. In thinking about the different forms of sport and exercise that people do, we can start to understand that there are some general trends that we see when we do laboratory-based studies anyway. If we do aerobic exercise, like walking or jogging or a mild bike ride, we tend to see blood sugar levels drop during the activity. And sometimes the drop is much larger than on other occasions, but generally we see glucose levels drop, and sometimes we develop hypoglycemia. Other forms of exercise and sport can cause glucose levels to rise. There's some evidence that in elite level athletes doing very competitive effort exercise events, or even a structured game of basketball where the game is on the line, then glucose levels might actually rise. And we've been fascinated by why there is so much variability and why there's sometimes in some individuals a larger rise than others, and sometimes during aerobic exercise where there might be greater drops than on other occasions. And we've theorized that this might be related to things like how much insulin is in circulation when we do exercise. We call this insulin on board, or IOB. How much hypoglycemia exposure we've had over the last several days or weeks. More hypoglycemia exposure typically causes more risk for low blood sugar during exercise and after exercise. For those of us who have a rise in blood sugar level, we think that it might be related to stress hormones, but it could also be related to excessive carb intake during exercise or before exercise. It might be related to a block infusion set if you're on an insulin pump, dehydration, or illness. So our latest research projects have been looking at trying to explain some of the variability in the typical blood sugar responses to these different discrete forms of exercise. One case study that got me very interested in this was a note from Gary Hall Jr., who is one of the elite level competitive athletes living with type 1 diabetes, who competed in several Olympic Games. Now, Gary, in the year 2000, competed in the Sydney Olympic Games in several swimming events. His 50-meter race, though, was something that we all could learn from. Gary's glucose control was in great shape prior to the race. And back in 2000, he was using finger sticks to measure his blood glucose concentrations. And before this 50-meter race, he checked his blood sugar, and his blood sugar was in range at around 138 milligrams per deciliter. Those of us in Canada use millimoles. That's equivalent to around 7.7 millimoles. But the competition stress and the intensity of that race caused his blood sugar to rise. And as he noted, after the race, he tested within 10 minutes, and his blood sugar was 388 milligrams per deciliter, or over 20 millimoles per liter. And that world record race, that gold medal race, that lasted only 21 seconds. Well, just under 22 seconds. So it's incredible to think that a short burst of very intense activity lasting just seconds can cause the blood sugar to rise so rapidly. And we're starting to understand what are the reasons for that and what should we do to help try to prevent it or at least treat it if it does occur. Now, Gary got a gold medal, so I think there's good evidence that even if the blood sugar does rise out of range, you can still perform very impressively while living with the diagnosis of type 1. Now, to better understand the reasons why this might happen and how frequent it might happen, we've undertaken 2 recent studies with support from the Leona M. and Harry B. Helmsley Charitable Trust, and with support from research run out of the Jabe Center for Health Research in the US. And we did 2 cohort studies where we looked at blood sugar responses during exercise in teens with type 1 diabetes and in adults with type 1 diabetes. So I'm just going to briefly tell you about what we did in these studies and what we found. Well, this was an at-home exercise study, and it's a good thing we designed it for it to be at home because it was done during the COVID pandemic. So we didn't have a lot of hospital visits for these studies. These were all people living with diabetes exercising their usual exercise activities at home or in their place of work or perhaps in the playground. We recruited almost 250 teens with type 1 and almost 600 adults with type 1 living in the USA to track their exercise through a bunch of different wearables, and then to try to determine if different forms of exercise might cause different changes in blood glucose concentrations and what other variables might be impacting glycemia. And we use the Dexcom sensor for these, for monitoring glucose in these studies. You can see from this screenshot here that we were able to capture quite a bit of information during the individual throughout their day. We could monitor their glucose levels in near real time during both sedentary days and active days. And in this picture here, we see some bars or blue colored lines that show when they were doing physical activity, often causing their blood sugar to drop. In blue are regular activities that they typically would do, and in pink are some activities that we prescribed to see how prescribed exercise of either resistance training or aerobic training or high intensity interval training might impact their blood glucose responses. We also had heart rate and other metrics that we could quantify in these studies using this type of wearable technology. So the first research question that we had is, what are the key participant level and event level drivers that tend to cause our blood sugar responses to be somewhat variable from person to person, and also within us, within our exercise events? Why do we not always respond the same way? What we found by looking at over 2,700 unique exercise events that were the prescribed exercise, that there are a lot of reasons why there's variability. Some individuals would have a near 30 milligram per deciliter rise during exercise. Other individuals might have a near 60 milligram per deciliter drop in exercise, and everything in between. These are the variables that we showed impacted the magnitude of change in our blood sugar levels. The exercise type we did, how much insulin we had in our circulation, the time of day, whether we were males or females, what our baseline A1C, and lots of other patterns that were quite interesting, such as the patterns of our sleep prior to exercise, the day before exercise, and our heart rate levels at rest and during exercise. Now, this work is about to be published in Diabetes Care, but one other important finding from this study is that although blood sugar responses were variable, overall, any form of exercise tended to improve the time in glucose target range. We're trying to keep our blood sugar between 90 and 180 milligrams per deciliter as much as we can. And we find that on days that we do exercise, we're getting on average 80% time in range, where these same individuals, if they're sedentary, that time in range drops to around 75%. And it doesn't really matter what type of exercise you do. Aerobic exercise like jogging, walking, bike riding, interval type exercise where we get our heart rate up intermittently, or resistance exercise, we see that being physically active improves our time and range on our active days better than our sedentary days. And I think that was an important finding. In the pediatric study, I just want to highlight one interesting finding that we've determined so far. And that is the issue of competition stress. Going back to how Gary Hall Jr. had that competition stress, his blood sugar rise. What we found is that in teens with type 1 diabetes, if they had competitive exercise, their glucose levels tended not to drop, shown in red. In fact, sometimes the glucose levels would rise 20 or more milligrams per deciliter. And if that same exercise was done in a non-competitive situation, glucose tended to drop. In particular, even in activities that lasted more than 40 minutes or so, competitive exercise was often associated with a rise in glucose, not a drop. So when you play basketball in a competitive stage, you might see that your blood sugars are a little bit higher than if you're just doing a basketball training session without the competition. So thanks for your attention today and this opportunity to share some of the data related to the T1D projects. There's lots of variables that impact our blood sugar responses to exercise. Some of these variables we're learning more about. But overall, remember, exercise is often good for our percent time in range, much better than being sedentary with type 1. And just highlighting that competitive exercise, you might see a slightly different response in your blood sugar levels. We often see it rise rather than drop. Thanks again for this great opportunity. And thanks to the research team that supported this study, including the Helmsley Charitable Trust.
Oh my goodness. That was so informational. And Professor Michael Riddell hit it right on the head. I've played basketball. Every time before a game, I am probably the most competitive person you will ever meet. And my blood sugar rises. And I would call my doctor and say, wait, I'm working out. I'm trying to lower my numbers. Why is that happening? It's because I am so competitive, and that's exactly what happens. Thank you so much, Professor Michael. Let's do a quick recap to make sure that we got all the goods. Glucose responses to exercise are highly variable, but some of some of the things that make it variable is a thought to be related to factors you can control, including the type of exercise, the time of day you exercise, and how much insulin is in your body, the foods eaten, and how well managed your glucose is before you exercise. Having consistency in your life may help to better predict your glucose response given the form of exercise. Tip number 2. During doing 30 minutes of structured exercise workout each day can improve your glucose time in range. 30 minutes, we can do that. Number 3, and the last one, exercise or sport performed under competition stress tends to result in higher glucose levels compared to exercise or sport without competitive stress. That was the number 1 takeaway for me. I am so competitive, and I know our next guest is probably more competitive than me. Our last guest of the day, trainer and entrepreneur JT Maniac, was overcome many challenges in his life, and fitness has played a significant role in steering him in a positive direction and helping him succeed. As a personal trainer for more than 12 years, he finds purpose in helping others transform their lives and achieve their health and fitness goals. His company, JTM Fit, provides online training programs that have helped thousands worldwide make incredible physical and mental transformations. Please join me in welcoming JT. Hello. How
you
are
doing, Jordan?
you? I'm good. I can't beat you in a push-up competition. I know it, but if we go to a hoop court, that's where my competitive drive will kick in.
You probably could get me there, but I could probably train you for that push-up competition too.
There it is. There it is. I know. Well, let's just get into it. I know that you have such a powerful story. You've overcome some obstacles in your life and made significant transformations leading up to your success today. Can you share a little bit about your story?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thank you for, all the people that were sharing tonight. It's been awesome just kind of listening and, learning some things, and it's been really great so far. And thank you for everyone that's tuning in as well. I was an athlete as a kid, and very early on in my life, I kind of went to the dark side and got in some trouble, and, found drugs and alcohol very early on in my life. And it took me down a very bad path. I ended up quitting all sports, and fast forward to I was 20 years old, and I found myself just, not caring if I lived or died, and was heavily addicted, couldn't work, was unemployable, basically living out of my car. And, thankfully, I reached a point of rock bottom, and I had a moment of grace and was able to reach out and get help. And that's how I found fitness. So back in 2005, when I got sober, I got into fitness. And it totally changed my life. I knew that I needed something that was going to be positive, that was going to give me direction and structure in order to stay sober. So that was one of the things I did. And I dove into it, and it changed my life. It turned into my career, and it's turned into, a business, and, where I'm totally living the dream. My life has turned into something that I truly never thought was possible. So it's just a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. Thank you so much for sharing your story. We're so happy that you're here, and I'm sure other people listening can really learn from your story. And you're also a type 1 diabetic. Tell me about how you got diagnosed. How old were you? What was going on?
Yeah, so I actually just did a full YouTube video explaining my whole diagnosis story. I was 28 years old, so I got it pretty late in life. Although there are quite a few people now getting diagnosed much later in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was feeling really off. Lost 15 to 20 pounds in a matter of a couple of weeks. Couldn't sleep at night because I was going to the bathroom so frequently, and then the blurry vision started, being disoriented, and I finally drove myself to the emergency room, and my blood sugars were over 1,000 when I was diagnosed. And it was a crazy experience.
It really is. Like I had all of those same symptoms, like waking up and thinking, am I blind? Like what is happening? All of these things that you're just not used to, and your life can just really change so quickly.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, you kind of tap into strength you never thought you had, especially not knowing what diabetes was. Like Brianna was talking about that. I didn't know what type 1 was. It was just immediate fear. And all I knew that, diabetics lose their limbs and lose their vision, and they could die. That was just, 0 to 60 to the negative. Not understanding what could be possible, and then also not understanding, what a beautiful place in time that we exist in, where we have the technology that we have to manage our disease. It's amazing.
It is. And then your love for exercise, fitness, and nutrition, how has that kind of impacted your T1D life?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things my mom told me when I was in the emergency room, she said to me, because I was already, pretty fit at the time I was diagnosed. She said to me, you're not going to want to hear this, but you're the best, or the perfect person to get this disease. And, I didn't want to hear it at the time, but she was right. ultimately I already knew how to eat healthy. I already knew how to, live a healthy lifestyle. I already was living a healthy lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fairly easy for me to start eating healthy and be healthy because I already was. But yeah, there were certainly, a lot of challenges that just come along with type 1, as we all know. That it doesn't matter if you're healthy or not, you're just going to face the challenges. You gotta deal with it. You got to manage it, and you got to get through it.
Yes. And I want to see some of those exercises. If you can't get to a gym like me, or I have a gym membership, but sometimes it just holds me back and I can't go. We'd love to learn a few exercises that can be done at home to help manage your numbers and get you on a good fitness regimen.
Yeah, I mean, first off, if you're someone who's not working out at all, I mean, walking is the best place to start. It seems so basic and maybe boring, but it really is the best place to start. So if you're not doing anything at all, just start walking. Get up, start moving. You're going to feel better. Your blood sugars are going to be better for sure. Doing that kind of cardiovascular activity. Number two, I mean, there's so many different things that you can do at home. There's countless, body weight exercises that we can start with just to get the body moving, start building some sort of body weight strength, get the heart rate up, burn calories, and ultimately burn body fat, which is, I think we all want to burn body fat, right? We all want to do that. So there's so many things you can do. You gotta pick yourself up and you gotta push yourself to get out there and do them.
Would you say stretching is always number one? Because even if you are just starting to walk, or an average person, maybe not a super fit athlete, you got to make sure that your muscles are ready to start moving, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I wouldn't say it's number one. It's a part of the entire package, stretching, but it should be an absolute priority for everybody. Some people are just blessed with the flexible genes, which I am not, and I'm sure many of us are not. So it's important that we do take that time. It's going to minimize the risk of injury. It's also going to help us perform better at anything that we're doing in life or in sports.
How do you manage your numbers during a workout? Because I know when I first got diagnosed, that was the first thing I did, was join a gym because I heard exercise helps, but I was on the treadmill for 5 minutes and then I was crashing like immediately.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of manage throughout, from the start of the workout, the middle to the end?
Yeah, I mean, first off, as we all know, managing type 1 with exercise, while exercise is so important and it's so important for our health, can also make our lives as type 1s way more difficult and way more challenging. And there's so many different factors that can play into it. Like when I first was diagnosed, I was on pens for the first 8 months of my diagnosis. And just my experience, living on pens is going to make your life more challenging. There's much less control than using a pump. So if you're someone who is really athletic and really active, I highly recommend, and there's no plug here, but I just highly recommend getting on some sort of pump. It's just going to make your life a lot easier. So yeah, I too have battled with lows over the years and things of that nature. Also a lot of highs, post-workout highs, post-workout lows. What I found, like my sweet spot right now, is I'm fasting. So I work out fasted, and I find it's so much easier to manage my blood sugars. Because for me, anytime I have insulin on board, it just makes things more challenging. The drops seem to be way more significant and way more drastic. And I find that I just have much tighter management when I'm fasting. So that is my go-to. And that's where I've really found my sweet spot over the past couple of years.
That's amazing. I love that. We're all trying to find our sweet spot and what works best for us. I believe we have a video to show of some workouts that potentially we can do at home. Maybe, yes.
Play the video.
Here we go.
Yeah, so I mean, as we were talking about earlier, there's so many things we can do at home as far as working out goes. Now, the exercises you're about to see are going to be more advanced. So some of you out there are going to say, "Oh, I can't do this. I don't want to be like this guy." Let me tell you, these are the kind of levels that you can reach from training for a long, long time. I've been working out and training hard for over 17 years, and I've reached a level where I can do a lot of different things with my body, and I feel pretty fit. I think I'm pretty fit. But ultimately, things like this we can do at home. We don't need equipment. We don't need the stress of, dishing out money each month for a gym membership. There's so many things that we can do. And there's so many ways that we can modify as well. So again, you're probably looking at this stuff saying, I can't do this. This is not me. But it is. If you knew how to modify, you had me guiding you, right? Whether it be like a one-on-one training session or my online programs or my Facebook community, you can, all fitness levels can get after these style of workouts. So, I always tell people, don't be jaded by some of the advanced things that you see on my Instagram account or things of that nature, because you could maybe not reach the exact level that I'm at, but you could absolutely surpass levels that you thought were possible for yourself.
And everybody has to start somewhere, just how you started somewhere.
Absolutely. I mean, when I started out, when I first got sober and started working out, I was like 135, 140 pounds. I had no muscle mass, nothing. I remember, looking at myself in the mirror at like a Planet Fitness, being like, when is it going to happen for me? And you fast forward, a number of years of being really consistent and just working hard. And I've been able to reach the level that I'm at today.
That is so inspiring. Your story in itself is an inspiration, but do you have any words of encouragement, maybe for someone who's like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to start doing something. I'm going to start walking. What are your words of encouragement for a T1D?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to check your blood sugars often. I have a fairly large social media following, and I get so many questions and also concerns of, I can't, prevent my lows. I can't do this and that. And while we're always going to face challenges being type 1 diabetics, we can mitigate a lot of the challenges by checking often. If we're lazy and not checking, you're probably going to have more issues and more problems. And again, not to say you're going to have perfect control, because you're not. We all know that, this is like predictably unpredictable.
Yes.
Right? So, is to check often and to have a strong mindset. We have to understand that there are worse things to have in this world. And I'm not trying to minimize anybody's disease in any way, shape, or form, but there are worse things to have. And remember that we live in an era where we have such amazing technology to manage our disease. So just remember that when you're feeling like really stressed out or angry that you can't control, you can't get your blood sugars up, they're crashing too fast, whatever it is, remember, it could be a lot worse, and just to keep pushing forward, because we're all in this, and the technology is just going to get better as we go along. So hang in there with whatever you're going through. And if you're about to start walking, get out there and do it. Right? Don't just say you're going to do it. Get out there and do it, and just take it one day at a time.
One day at a time, one step at a time. Thank you so much, Jay. I think I needed to hear that. That was so great. Sure. So wonderful. How can people find you? Plug all of your things.
Yeah, you guys can find me at my website, jtmfit.com. You can also find me on all social media at JTM_fit.
Wonderful. I'll be following along. Maybe I can just start with some basic push-ups, and then I'll get to the jumping ones.
And then we'll have a competition. We'll do it live so everyone can watch.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I will start training now.
You got to start now.
Thank you, Jay. That was so awesome. Well, that's it. That was everyone. That was so much fun. Thank you to all of our panelists for sharing their stories. As a journalist, as a storyteller, I do not take that for granted, for people sharing their stories. I also want to say a special thank you to our sponsors. Without you, this couldn't be possible. You can learn more about our national partners who make the TypeOneNation Virtual Summit possible and the latest technology and T1D management at jdrf.org/TON Summit. And thank you to all of you for joining, all of you guys for popping in the comments, for listening to my terrible jokes. I appreciate you. This has been so much fun. And if you haven't done so already, please visit jdrf.org/TON Summit and register for the series. You don't want to miss any upcoming ones. In March, we have one focused on women's health. I'm so excited about that one. Stay tuned for more information. Again, I'm Jordan. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, and have a great rest of your night.